This is a $12,000 sim rig, and this is an $800 one. Both can lap competitively, both can feel convincing, and both can feel completely wrong. Because sim racing isn't actually about realism, it's about believability. And there's a lot of people out there chasing the wrong signals. When you're driving in a real car, your brain isn't thinking about torque numbers, pedal material, or spec sheets. It's subconsciously looking for three things: resistance, timing, and consistency. Resistance tells you how much effort matters. Timing tells you when your input takes effect. Consistency tells you whether you can trust that response. When those three are in agreement, your brain will fill in all the gaps: weight, speed, risk, grip. But when they're not, the illusion collapses. And there's no amount of money that's going to fix that. That's why sometimes a cheap rig can feel shockingly good, and a really expensive rig can feel really dead. It's not that they're necessarily bad. It's just that they're either mismatched, misaligned, or mistuned. Now, if you're considering getting into sim racing or upgrading your rig, the first thing you got to know is that a wheelbase isn't going to make you faster. It's just going to tell you when not to push. And when it comes to wheelbases, power can be an important factor. But what's even more important is receiving information that you can actually trust. For the purpose of this video, for the most part, we're going to forget about brands and we're going to forget about marketing. Because in 3 months, most of that will all be different. Instead, we're going to focus solely on the different force ranges and how they impact the information you get. With so many affordable direct drive options on the market now, the question of whether you should be starting with the direct drive wheelbase left a long time ago. What you should be asking now is, how much do you really need to get started? How much is actually enough? At the low end, around the 5 to 9 Newton meter range, realism doesn't really exist yet, but communication definitely does. You feel the wheel load up, you feel when the front tires start to give, you stop guessing so much. That alone is a massive shift from the older gear and belt driven wheels, and a huge shift from the controller. Most bases in this range don't make sense anymore, because they're priced too closely to the next tier to even justify the compromise. There's really only one wheelbase still earning its stripes in the 5 to 9 Newton meter range, and that's the Camus C5. Not because it's absolutely incredible, not because it's the best 5 Newton meter wheelbase, but simply because it's honest. The C5 can deliver more detail, more force feedback, and an overall better experience than gear and belt driven wheels in the same price range, and I think Camus knows that 5 Newton meters is kind of on its way out for the entry level. So they've priced it accordingly, and it actually makes sense. But for most sim racers, the sweet spot actually lives in the 10 to 15 Newton meter range. And to be quite honest, this is probably where most sim racers should stop. Not because more force is actually a bad thing, but this is just where wheelbases start delivering valuable feedback and information without becoming overcomplicated. With the right wheelbase, you're no longer pushing the motor to max capacity. The details arrive more clean instead of compressed. The weight builds instead of snapping on. You don't fight the wheel. You don't even question it. You actually start to believe it. For the majority of sim racers, this is the point where the illusion can fully lock in. Going higher in force isn't wrong. It definitely has its advantages, but speed isn't going to be one of them. And overutilization can quickly become its downfall. Going over 15 Newton meters isn't about buying more realism. It's about buying headroom and insurance. This range isn't really about pure strength. It's about margin. More overhead means less clipping, cleaner force transitions, and even better signal separation in some titles. But what it doesn't translate to is faster lap times. If you know exactly why you want to be in this range, then it might be for you. But if you don't, then all you're buying is reassurance, not performance. And if it's tuned in properly, it'll actually have the opposite effect of all of that. Wheelbases definitely matter. And if they're tuned right, a mid to high level wheelbase is definitely going to sell immersion. But it's your pedals that are going to determine your lap time. Braking is the only place where sim racers need maximum precision under stress every single lap. And here's a simple way to think of it. If your brake pedal measures how far you push it, you're guessing. If it measures how hard you push it, you're developing. Pressure builds muscle memory. Distance builds inconsistency. That's why load cell brakes were such a turning point for sim racing. It's not because they were fancy. It's because your body can finally repeat the same action over and over again without thinking about it. All these debates you hear about elastomers, springs, hydraulics, even active pedals, they're all secondary. They're basically just feel preferences, not performance multipliers. But they do definitely add some complexity when you're trying to choose the right pedals. So let's simplify things a little bit. First off, if the pedals are part of a wheelbase bundle, forget about them. Now, I'm not saying there aren't a few exceptions, but most bundles come with a basic pedal set that utilize travel over pressure for braking. After that, your preferred racing discipline starts to become a factor. If you're only interested in racing F1 and GT3, then floor-mounted pedals might make the most sense. If you like to mix things up a bit and you want to keep that feel closer to your daily, inverted pedals might be better. Springs and elastomers definitely get the job done, but if it fits the budget, I think hydraulic pedals are a bit more realistic. Then there's the active pedals, but the price and complexity make that a topic for a totally different video. I've tested a lot of pedals over the years, but I always find myself going back to the Fanatec inverted V3s. I'm not necessarily looking to promote them, and I'm not saying they're right for everybody, but for me, I like that they're fully adjustable, they're great for mixed disciplines, and the layout feels just a little more natural than the other options I've tried. And that very well may be my most unpopular opinion in the whole video, so come at me. The truth is, what matters most isn't the mechanism. It all circles back to repeatability. If the pedal has flex, your brain's going to misinterpret the pressure. If the mounts move, consistency goes out the window. That's why wildly different pedals can produce the same lap times if they're mounted and tuned correctly. And that leads directly into what might be the most overlooked part of any sim rig build, the cockpit. This is the part of your sim racing setup that might actually be quietly failing you. Because cockpits don't add realism. They remove misperceptions. A rigid cockpit doesn't make your gear any better. It just stops making your body question it. That's why on a weak sim rig, pedals feel worse, strong wheels feel numb, and haptics feel dull. A perfect example of this is how a low-powered bundle like the C5 can feel perfectly decent on a foldable cockpit. But if I had stiffer pedals and a stronger base, I'd spend more time trying to hold everything in place than focusing on racing. Basically, if there's movement on your rig, your brain's just going to disconnect. This is why I generally recommend starting with an aluminum profile cockpit, because cockpit stiffness matters more than brands or color. Most 80/40 profiles are great for a majority of builds, and a 160/40 is almost guaranteed to have nothing flex. There's also some steel tube options out there that can deliver a similar experience, but they're a bit less versatile in mounting options. Your cockpit is the one choice you'll make that can actually affect the performance and usability of every future upgrade. So it's definitely not the place to compromise on a new build. Once you've got your rig dialed in with natural force feedback, a firmly mounted seat, and locked in place pedals, the last logical step in believability is showing your brain what it wants to see. This is that time where you have to make the choice between a single screen, triple screen, or VR. Fortunately, unlike the other options, this is a choice that's scalable, and while it may impact your experience in the short term, this is where you can afford to start on the cheap and grow depending on what your end goal is. When it comes to your windows to the virtual world, each option has its advantages. Neither triple screens or VR will change realism. They'll just change how your brain locates the car. Choosing screens will anchor the world. They'll give you a fixed reference point, they reward precision, and they make learning repeatable. That's why more competitive drivers tend to gravitate here. It reduces variables. For me, triple screens are my preference. They deliver an immersive surrounding in the most predictable way possible, but driving good graphics and functional frame rates require a lot more GPU and CPU than a single screen will. Others prefer the ultra-wide approach, which is definitely a more PC-friendly solution for high graphics and frame rates, but it comes at a cost of peripheral immersion. VR, on the other hand, teleports you right into the car. Depth becomes intuitive, speed feels dramatic, mistakes feel a whole lot bigger, and for so many years, I was still completely against VR because it also adds fatigue, friction, and variability. And that's not likely to change anytime soon. But I will say this, I've had the Pimax Crystal Lite and the Pimax Crystal Super for the last 6 months, and they've slowly started to convert me to a part-time VR user. I love the immersiveness and being able to feel like I'm really inside the car driving, and with the high resolution these headsets produce, there's no questioning my surroundings. And the fatigue I've felt from trying to focus in other headsets is much less. I've definitely found that they make me a more confident racer, but the lack of being able to interact with the car using my own hands kind of breaks the immersion, just enough to where I stick to triple monitors. Plus, I really enjoy building immersive cockpits. So in my opinion, neither one is actually better. They're just two approaches to achieving the same goal that stress different parts of your perception. And more than anything else, it's your own personal perception that determines how believable your sim racing experience is. That's why I say people build sim rigs backwards. They chase specs instead of signals, brands over consistency, and power over trust. The best sim rig isn't the one that costs the most. It's the one that your brain stops questioning and starts believing. And if you continue to build towards that, even the most modest setup can feel pretty good. And once you can trust that little feeling, you'll stop upgrading blindly and start upgrading intentionally. Now, for those of you that legitimately need an upgrade, I'm going to share some links in the description that'll help support the channel. But if your rig's already believable and you don't need an upgrade, don't even look at them. Just enjoy what you've built and don't let a good thing go sour. And for those of you that have been waiting for the Cup Car 2.0 build to come back, I've got some stuff on order to finally get the dash right and start to replicate the new Cup Car so that it can be a little more accurate. That means the creative juices are going to start flowing again, and we're going to get back to this build. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button and rung the bell, it's right down there. Go ahead and do that, and I'll see you guys out on the track.